This video is going to tell you exactly what happens on the day of your driving test. Now, if you're going up with your driving instructor, I'm quite sure that your instructor will have explained all of this to you. Apart from the fact that your driving needs to be good enough to be taking the test, it's nice to be mentally prepared as well, knowing exactly what's going to happen when you turn up on the day. Now, if you're somebody that suffers with extreme anxiety, you might like to have a look at the test centre waiting room before you go up to test, and if that's possible, then speak to your instructor. It's very important if you have got extreme anxiety to make sure that you're mentally prepared. So, on the driving test day, you're going to need your provisional driving licence. Don't leave home without it. You can't take the test without it, and you'd lose your fee if you turned up without it. Now, you will have received an email confirmation, but you don't need to show that on the day. And the examiner doesn't usually ask to see any theory test certificate, but if you've had some convictions on your driving licence already, then they most probably will. If you're worried, just take the theory certificate along. And I'd always advise that you check your emails before you go off to the test centre on the day. Check your spam folder just to make sure that your test hasn't been cancelled, because occasionally examiners can be ill. Now, if you're coming up with your driving instructor, you're not going to have to worry. You will definitely be attending the test with a suitable car. But if you're not attending the test with a driving instructor, then obviously make sure you do bring a car. A car is not supplied on the test. And if you're coming up in a private car, check your email, because it tells you cars that are suitable for the test and ones that aren't. Make sure if you're bringing up a private car that your car has current MOT, and make sure that the car is roadworthy. Only a few weeks ago I saw a car being turned away because it had a bald tyre. Now, some test centres don't have car parks, so if that is the case, just get your car parked up somewhere close by. And if your test centre has got a car park, then make sure that when you arrive, reverse into one of the car parking spaces so that you're ready to drive out. Some test centres have quite small car parks, they have quite strict rules. They don't really like you turning up at the test centre and entering that car park until you're within 10 minutes of the start of your test time. It's nothing worse than somebody coming back from their test looking to find somewhere to park up. They're still on their test and people are arriving at the test centre too early. Now, once you've got yourself all parked up, I would say don't go into the waiting room too early. It's like waiting to have your teeth ripped out. So the best thing to do is just wait outside in your car. Maybe check the surroundings around where the test centre is, just to see if there's any badly parked vehicles or anything that could affect you when you're about to leave to go out on that test. And they will have toilet facilities there. My advice is use the loos before you go out on your test. Once the examiners come into the waiting room, one of them will call out your first name. And the first thing they're going to do is ask to see your driving licence. While they're checking your driving licence, they're going to show you the tablet that has your details for your test on. On the tablet that they use to mark for your test, they will ask you to read the two declarations. One is that you're providing an insured car on test, and the other is that you've been living in the country for more than 185 days in the last year. The 185 days is the residency declaration, and you'd have had to have done that when you were applying for your provisional driving licence. You will have to sign on the tablet to agree to both of those. Now, when your examiner has a look at your driving licence, they'll ask if your name and address is still the same that's listed on the licence. They're asking that because, one, you could have recently got married and changed your name, or two, you may have recently moved and not updated your licence. Then they'll have a look at your face and compare it to the photo that you've used on your licence. Be very careful if you've used your passport photo to apply for your provisional driving licence, because some people have done that and used a photo on their passport that was when they were 12 years old and they don't look anything like it now. So make sure that the photo on your driving licence looks like you now. If yours doesn't, I suggest you get it changed now, well before you take your test, because if it doesn't look like you, they won't let you take that test. Now, when you booked your practical test, you would have listed an email address. That's where your confirmation will have come to, but it may be that you've gone up with your driving instructor and your instructor might have booked the test and used their email. They'll ask you to check that email address and confirm that that's where you'd like your test results sent to. This is where, if your driving instructor has booked it and you would prefer to have the test results sent to your email address, this is your chance to change it. Be very careful though. Fat fingers could make it that you put the wrong email address in and then you won't get the test result confirmation. Once all this legal stuff is done, they'll ask you if you're coming on your own. On the driving test, you can take your driving instructor with you. They will sit in the back of the car, or you can take any other person that's over 16 that can sit in the back of the car. That person will have to sit very quietly and very still, and they will sit behind the driver, not the examiner, like in this photo. The examiner on the way out of the waiting room will introduce themselves by their first name. And they'll ask if you're happy for them to call you by the name that's listed on your licence, or you may like to be known as something else. Then the examiner will test your eyesight. You need to be able to read a number plate from 20 metres. Now, if for some reason you couldn't read that number plate from 20 metres, they'll test you again, and they even will measure it out with a tape if you still can't read it. And if you can't read the number plate, your licence will be revoked. No doubt your driving instructor will have checked your eyesight regularly. I do, obviously, on the first lesson because that's a legal requirement, and I do check it periodically through the driving lessons just to make sure that their eyesight hasn't changed. It's up to you as the candidate to make sure that your eyesight meets the requirements. Make sure that if you wear glasses, don't forget to take those with you, and if you need contact lenses to read the number plate, make sure that you have those in, but these need to be declared on your licence. So once you've done all that, that's all the legal requirements done before the test. Now, what order this next thing happens in all depends. So if you've got a show me, tell me question, which is maybe under the bonnet or looking at the tyres, that question will be asked next. You can find a video on this channel about the questions underneath the bonnet and the tyre questions. Your show me, tell me question may be done in the car, and if that's the case, the examiner will just ask you to get in the car, pop your seatbelt on, not to start the engine, and he will then walk all the way around the car to check that it's roadworthy. Tyres need to have sufficient tread, no cuts and bulges in the tyre, and basically the car needs to look roadworthy. If it doesn't, that car's not going to go out on test, and you will lose your £62 test fee as it didn't go ahead. If your test is going to have a sat-nav drive on it, the examiner will then be setting up the sat-nav. Your examiner will also be noting some details. So say, for example, if you're coming up in a driving instructor's car and the ADI licence is in the window, which it should be, they'll be putting those details up onto the tablet. Once the examiner is ready, they will say something very similar to this. I'd like you to follow the road ahead unless I say otherwise, or the road markings or the road signs say otherwise. And if I want you to turn left or right, I will tell you in good time. Basically, they're saying traffic lights, mini roundabout, crossroads, anything that you come up to, you automatically follow the road ahead. And you need to be looking at the road markings and the road signs so that you can see the arrows for ahead in case it tells you to get into a different lane than the norm. Obviously, if you came up to a junction and it says to turn left or turn right, then obviously you would need to do that. Now, at the moment, 4 out of 5 tests will carry out sat-nav on your driving test. And the examiner will provide that sat-nav. You don't need to bring one along. Sat-nav routes will be carried out for approximately 20 minutes, and they could start from the test centre, or they may be set up when you're en route. And at the moment, 1 in 5 tests will carry out independent driving. Now, that will be somewhere where they pull you up on the side of the road, and then for approximately 20 minutes, they'll be asking you to follow signage. Now, it won't necessarily be the same route all the way through. So they may say, follow the signs to Timbuktu, and then maybe after about 4 or 5 minutes, they'll then say to you to follow the signs to Paris. So they basically will just change that on the route, but that'll be for approximately 20 minutes. Outside of that 20 minutes of either sat-nav or independent driving, you'll be following the road ahead unless they ask you to turn left or right, and obviously they will give you the instructions for that. Now, during the test, you'll be asked to pull over on the side of the road on the left occasionally, and you will at some point during the test be asked to pull over and carry out a hill start. Another thing you'll be asked to do is to pull up on the side of the road 1 car length before another parked car. They want to see that you can move off controlled from behind that parked car. Now, that parked car might be right next to a driveway, so if they ask you to pull up 1 car length before, don't worry about blocking the drive. In fact, they'll quite often say to you to ignore the fact that the driveway is there. They literally just want to see you stop and then move off from behind that parked car to see that you can control your vehicle. Currently, 1 in 3 driving tests carry out an emergency stop. Now, it's not just done randomly on the route. They will pull you up on the side of the road and then say something similar to this. In a short time, I'm going to ask you to carry out a stop as though in an emergency. My instruction for you to stop will be like this, and they will mostly put their hand up. And when I do that, I want you to stop the car quickly, safely, but under full control, just as though a child has stepped off the pavement in front of you. They will then ask you to drive on. You will then drive on. They will then obviously indicate for you to stop. You carry out the stop, and then they will say, I won't be asking you to do that again. In your own time, carry on. And then you move away safely. Now, be very careful when you go to move off after you've done the emergency stop, because your heart is going to be racing. So make sure that it's safe to move off. Now, on some driving tests, I expect that a real emergency stop scenario will arise. A car might pull straight out in front of you. A pedestrian may step straight out in the road in front of you. So if that happened, then obviously you would be judged on that emergency stop. So while you're out on your drive, you will be asked to demonstrate one of the show me questions. The first thing they'll say to you is when it's safe to do so, because you need to make sure it is safe. And you could be asked to either wash the front windscreen, wash the back windscreen, demist the front windscreen, demist the back windscreen, sound your horn, turn on your headlights and turn them off, or open the window fully and then close it. You will only be required to carry out one of these. You cannot fail for not being able to carry the thing out. You would get a minor driving fault for doing that. But if your driving got neglected while you were trying to do this, then you could fail. The same with the show me, tell me question at the beginning before you head out on your drive. You can't fail if you get that question wrong. Now, the routes can vary when you take your driving test. You could be on country roads, you could go around little housing estates, you could have lots of busy roundabouts on your driving test, and you could be on some urban dual carriageways or even drop onto full dual carriageways where the speed goes up to 70 miles per hour. And the approximate drive time would most probably be 35, maybe even up to 40 minutes. During this time, you will have carried out one manoeuvre that involves reversing. So one of the manoeuvres that you might be asked to do is to drive forward into a bay and reverse yourself back out again. Now, this manoeuvre is going to be carried out in a public car park. The examiner will only make you carry this out if there's 2 available spaces next to each other. And my advice is always turn into the first one. So if your car went a little bit wide, you've got the luxury of that second empty space. So another manoeuvre you might be asked to do is to reverse into a bay. Now, this could be done in a public car park, and if that's the case, you will have to drive back out of the bay again afterwards. This manoeuvre could be done at the very end of your test into the car park where the test centre is, where you wouldn't then drive off again. If you need help with reversing into the bay, then check out on our channel, because there is a video showing you how to reverse into a bay on the left and the right. So another manoeuvre that you might be asked to carry out is the pulling up on the right and reversing for 2 car lengths. So the examiner will ask you to pull up on the right, and once you've found your place to pull up on the right, they'll ask you to reverse your car back for approximately 2 car lengths, stop, and then drive on again. Remember that once you've carried out this reversing and you've stopped, you just get your car ready, and when it's safe, you drive straight on. So the final manoeuvre that you may be asked to carry out is the parallel park. So if you were to get this manoeuvre, the examiner would pull you up on the left first. They would then point out the car that you're going to use, and they would say something like, use that car, you're going to pull up next to it, stop, reverse or parallel park behind it, finish reasonably close to the curb, and make sure that you don't take your car over a 2 car length gap. Once you've completed that park, they'll ask you to drive on. And if you're struggling with parallel park, check out on our channel, because we have got a video all about how to carry out the parallel park. Now remember, you're only going to carry out one of these manoeuvres. Now it could be that at the end of your test you drive forward into a bay, but you've already carried out a manoeuvre while you're out on test, and that means that they wouldn't be judging you on your driving forward into the bay. So once you've arrived back at your test centre and your engine is switched off, that is when you will get the result from your test. Now, most probably at the beginning of your test, the examiner would have asked you if you wanted either your driving instructor or the person that brought you to the test to be there at your debrief. But if they haven't, they will ask you at this point. That's if obviously you've turned up to the test with somebody. And I would advise that you have that person there so that when you're listening to your result, you've got somebody else listening to it too. If you're unfortunate and you have failed, then the examiner will run through there and then exactly the errors that you made on your test. Your result will then be emailed to you to the address that you confirmed at the beginning of the test. If you have passed, then the examiner will fill out a pass certificate for you. Your test result will also be emailed to you. Remember, I said at the beginning of the test, when the examiner looks at your licence, he says, is your name and address still the same? And if it is still the same, they can offer to send off your driving licence for you. And I would highly advise doing that because that saves you then having to send it off and you will receive your new driving licence back much quicker. Of course, that means he has to send your licence off, and some people obviously need that for ID, but you're going to have to send it off anyway. And in fact, you'll most probably be without your ID for longer if you sent it off yourself rather than if they did it for you. Now, if you're going up in a private car, I wouldn't advise anybody to drive home if they've just failed their test. Your mind's not going to be in the right place and you could then have an accident. If you've passed, be very careful because you are most probably insured on the car that you're driving as a learner driver. And as soon as that examiner has issued you with a pass certificate, you are now a full licence holder. Depending on what insurance cover is on your car, it may be that you would be breaking the law to drive home if it's not covered for any driver over any age. To be honest, I wouldn't even advise driving home then. I think that your mind may be, you're so excited and you may not be concentrating fully. So I would always advise that you get the person that brought you to drive you home. Now, my driving insurance policy doesn't cover me to have a student drive the car home, and I think that's right not to do that. And one good thing is, as an instructor, when you drive them home, you leave them with a good example. Social media can be a wonderful thing, and a lot of people like to share their success on social media. If you decide to share your pass certificate on social media, blank out all the details where the examiner's signed, any numbers, any driving licence number, any name and address, so that basically all they can see is pass certificate, because this is where people can pick up your details and use your details for fraudulent activities. Now, all the details I've given you on this video are as of May 2025. They are carrying out some trials at the moment, so the driving tests may have changed by the time you look at this video, and by then, hopefully, I will have updated some details. Now, if you have any questions about the test that I may not have covered in the video, feel free to leave your question in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer for you. If you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe for more driving videos.